The rain battered the windows of Lincoln High, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding of my heart. I was 16, standing in the empty hallway, clutching a crumpled note from Elise that said, "Meet me by the oak tree after school." Every step toward that tree felt like a betrayal of the world. I'd been taught to navigate a world where girls like me didn't fall in love with girls like her. My name is Mia Carter, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio where secrets were currency and conformity was law. Lincoln High was a microcosm of that world. Cliques ruled the cafeteria, football games were sacred, and anything that deviated from the norm was whispered about behind cupped hands. I was the quiet girl with chestnut hair and a sketchbook always tucked under my arm, blending into the background like a shadow. But Elise, she was different. Elise Harper was the sun breaking through a storm cloud, with her blonde braids swinging as she walked, her green eyes sharp enough to cut through lies. She was the preacher's daughter, untouchable in her grace, yet somehow she'd chosen me. That afternoon by the oak tree, under a sky bruised with rain clouds, she stood waiting. Her pastel sweater was damp, clinging to her shoulders, and her eyes held a fire I'd never seen before. "Mia," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't keep pretending." Her words hit me like a lightning strike, and in that moment, I knew we were about to cross a line we could never uncross. The first time I noticed Elise was in sophomore year during English class. She sat 2 rows ahead, her head tilted as she scribbled notes on The Great Gatsby. I was supposed to be analyzing symbolism, but all I could see was the way her fingers twirled a strand of hair, the way her laugh lit up the room when she read aloud. I told myself it was admiration, nothing more. Girls didn't feel this way about other girls, not in my town, not in my church, not in the carefully curated life my parents had built for me. But feelings don't obey rules. By junior year we were inseparable, passing notes in the halls, sharing secrets during late-night phone calls. We'd sneak away to the library's back corner, where dusty books hid us from prying eyes. There she'd tell me about her dreams of leaving Ohio, of studying art in New York, of being free. I'd listen, sketching her face in my notebook, each line a confession I couldn't say aloud. "You're my safe place, Mia," she'd said once, her hand brushing mine. That touch lingered, a spark that refused to fade. Our town wasn't kind to people like us. Whispers of sin and shame echoed from the pulpit of Elise's father's church, where my family attended every Sunday. Her father, Pastor Harper, was a towering man with a voice like thunder, preaching love but wielding judgment. I saw the way Elise flinched when he spoke of unnatural desires, her eyes darting to mine across the pews. We learned to hide our glances, our touches, our truth. But hiding love is like caging a wildfire. It only grows fiercer. That day by the oak tree, Elise took my hand, her fingers cold but steady. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said. "I want to be with you, Mia. Really be with you." My breath caught, torn between joy and terror. I wanted to pull her close, to tell her I felt the same, but the weight of our world pressed down on me. What would happen if someone saw us? If her father found out? If my parents, with their quiet expectations and rigid rules, knew their daughter was in love with a girl? "I want that too," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rain. "But how? This place. It'll destroy us." Elise's eyes softened and she stepped closer, her breath warm against my cheek. "Then we'll be careful," she said. "We'll find a way." And just like that, we made a pact, a silent vow to carve out a space for our love, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of secrecy. We'd meet in hidden places, the abandoned bleachers behind the football field, the old music room no one used anymore. Each stolen moment was a rebellion, a fragile bubble of happiness in a world that felt like it was closing in. Elise would hum softly, her head resting on my shoulder, while I sketched her in the margins of my notebook. We laughed about silly things, her obsession with old jazz records, my terrible attempts at baking cookies. But beneath the laughter was a constant undercurrent of fear. One wrong move, one careless glance, and everything could unravel. Rumors started to spread. It began with sidelong glances in the cafeteria, whispers behind lockers. "Are they? You know?" someone asked loud enough for me to hear. My stomach churned, but Elise just squeezed my hand under the table, her jaw set. "Let them talk," she said, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Her father's sermons grew sharper, his words slicing through the congregation like a warning. The devil tempts us with desires we must resist, he'd say, and I'd feel Elise's hand tremble in mine. One night, we snuck out to the lake on the edge of town, a place where the stars felt closer than the judgment of our neighbors. Lying on a blanket, we talked about the future college, cities where we could walk hand in hand without fear. New York, Elise said, her voice dreamy. We'll get an apartment, paint the walls bright colors, live without hiding. I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. How could we escape when every step felt like a risk? That night, under the stars, she kissed me for the first time. It was soft, tentative, like she was asking a question. I answered by pulling her closer, my heart racing as the world fell away. For a moment it was just us, no rules, no fear, just love. But as we drove back to town, reality crept in. Headlights flashed behind us, and I saw the silhouette of a familiar truck. Pastor Harper. My blood ran cold. Had he seen us? Had he followed us? The next day at school, Elise was quieter, her usual spark dimmed. He asked where I was last night, she said, her voice low. I lied, but, Mia, I think he knows something. Fear tightened its grip on me, but I forced a smile. We'll be okay, I said, though I didn't believe it. We were two girls in love, caught in a town that saw our hearts as a sin. And as the whispers grew louder, I knew our time was running out. The air in Lincoln High felt heavier after that night, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Elise and I moved through the halls like ghosts, our eyes meeting only in fleeting glances. Every whisper, every stare, felt like a blade hovering over our secret. In the days that followed, we tried to hold on to our routine notes passed in class, quick smiles in the library, but the weight of suspicion was suffocating. My parents noticed my distraction, their questions growing sharper. Why are you always with that Harper girl? My mom asked one evening, her tone laced with something I couldn't name. I mumbled about homework, but her eyes lingered, searching for cracks in my story. Elise's home was worse. Pastor Harper's sermons had taken on a new edge, his voice booming about protecting our youth from temptation. Elise told me he'd started checking her phone, questioning her late-night outings. He doesn't know, she whispered one afternoon in the music room, her fingers tracing the keys of an old piano. But he's looking for something to prove. I wanted to hold her, to promise we'd find a way out, but fear kept my hands at my sides. The breaking point came during a Friday night football game. The whole town was there, cheering under the stadium lights, a sea of school colors and small-town pride. Elise and I had planned to meet behind the concession stand, a brief escape from the crowd. I arrived first, my heart pounding as I scanned the shadows. When she appeared, her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. He found one of your sketches, she said, her voice breaking. The one I kept in my journal. He called me an abomination. I froze, the world tilting beneath me. The sketch was of her laughing by the lake, her face glowing in my pencil strokes. I'd given it to her as a gift, a piece of my heart. Now it was evidence in her father's hands. What did you say? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Elise shook her head, tears spilling over. I told him it was just a drawing, but he didn't believe me. He's sending me to some camp next week. Conversion camp. The words hit like a punch. Conversion camp. I'd heard the rumors, places where kids were sent to be fixed, where love was treated like a disease. I grabbed her hands, desperation clawing at me. You can't go, I said. We'll run away. We'll figure it out. But even as I spoke, I saw the doubt in her eyes. Where could we go? Two 17-year-old girls with no money, no plan, in a town that would hunt us down? That night I lay awake, my mind racing with impossible plans. I thought of my savings $200 from babysitting, hidden in a shoebox under my bed. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I texted Elise, begging her to meet me the next day. We needed a plan, a way to stay together. But her reply was short. I'm scared, Mia. I don't know if I can do this. The next morning, I found her by the oak tree, her braid fraying in the wind. She looked smaller, as if the weight of her father's words had shrunk her. I don't want to lose you, she said, her voice raw. But if we keep this up, they'll tear us apart. I wanted to argue, to fight, but the truth was a stone in my chest. We were kids, trapped in a world that didn't want our love to exist. We decided to be more careful, to pull back. No more notes, no more secret meetings. But love doesn't bend to logic. A week later, during a school assembly, I caught her eye across the gym. She smiled, a small defiant curve of her lips, and my heart ached with how much I missed her. After the assembly, I followed her to the bathroom, unable to stay away. "Elise," I whispered, checking the stalls for eavesdroppers. "We can't just give up." She turned to me, her eyes fierce. "I'm not giving up," she said. "But I need time. I need to figure out how to get through this camp, how to keep my dad from." Her voice broke, and she stepped closer, her hand grazing my cheek. For a moment we were just us again, the world fading to nothing. Then the door swung open, and a girl from our class froze, her eyes widening. "Oh," she said, backing away. "I didn't. I'll go." Panic surged through me. Elise grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "She won't say anything," she said, but her voice shook. We both knew better. Small towns thrive on gossip, and this was dynamite. By Monday, the whispers had turned into shouts. "Mia and Elise," kids snickered in the halls. "The preacher's daughter and the art girl." I felt their eyes on me, judging, mocking. My parents called me into the living room that night, their faces grim. "Is it true?" my dad asked. "Are you involved with that girl?" I wanted to lie, to protect what little we had left, but the truth was a tide I couldn't hold back. "I love her," I said, my voice steady despite the tears. My mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My dad just stared, his silence heavier than any sermon. "You're confused," he said finally. "This isn't you." But it was me. It was the truest part of me. Elise wasn't at school the next day. Or the day after. I texted her, called her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. By Wednesday, I was frantic, biking to her house under the cover of dusk. Her mom answered the door, her face cold. "She's gone," she said. "To the camp. Don't come back here, Mia." The door slammed shut and I stood there, the world crumbling around me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk, sketching Elise's face from memory, each line a plea for her to come back. I didn't know if she was okay, if they were hurting her, if she still loved me. All I knew was that our love, the thing that made me feel alive, was being torn apart by people who called it wrong. And I was powerless to stop it. Days bled into weeks, each one a gray haze without Elise. I went through the motions at school, classes, sketches, silence, but the absence of her laughter left a hole nothing could fill. The rumors had quieted, replaced by pitying glances, as if I were a broken thing to be fixed or ignored. I tried to find out where she was. The camp was a mystery, a place whispered about in church circles but never named. I scoured the internet, piecing together fragments from forums and hushed conversations. It was called Haven of Grace, a conversion therapy program in rural Pennsylvania. The stories I found, kids isolated, shamed, forced to renounce who they were, made my stomach churn. I imagined Elise there, her bright spirit dimmed, and it broke me. I wrote her letters I couldn't send, pouring my heart onto pages I hid under my mattress. "I miss you. I'm fighting for us. Please hold on." My parents watched me like hawks, their disappointment a constant weight. "You need to move on," my mom said one night, her voice soft but firm. "This isn't God's plan for you." I wanted to scream that love was the truest thing I'd ever felt, but I just nodded, retreating to my room to sketch until my hands ached. At school I became a ghost. Friends I'd once laughed with avoided me, their eyes darting away in the halls. Only Sarah, a quiet girl from art club, dared to sit with me at lunch. "I heard about Elise," she said one day, her voice low. "I'm sorry." She hesitated, then slid a piece of paper across the tablet, a phone number for a local LGBTQ support group. They might know how to help. I stared at the number, hope flickering for the first time in weeks. That night I called the group from a payphone outside the gas station, my hands shaking. A woman named Rachel answered, her voice warm and steady. I told her everything about Elise, the camp, the fear that was eating me alive. "You're not alone," she said. "There are ways to fight this." She told me about legal resources, advocacy groups working to shut down conversion camps. It wasn't much, but it was a lifeline. I clung to it, determined to bring Elise back. I started sneaking out to attend the support group meetings in a community center an hour away. There I met others like me, teens, adults, people who'd survived the judgment of small towns and rigid families. They taught me words I'd never dared to say aloud. Lesbian, queer, valid. They gave me courage, but they also gave me truth. Getting Elise out would be a battle, and I was still just a kid. 3 months after Elise left, I got a letter. No return address, just my name in her familiar handwriting. My heart stopped as I tore it open. Mia, I'm okay, but it's hard. They tell me I'm broken, but I think of you and I know I'm not. I'll be back soon. Don't give up on me. I read it 100 times, tears blurring the ink. She was fighting, and so would I. I threw myself into research, learning about laws, about minors' rights, about how to contact Elise without her parents knowing. Rachel helped me draft a letter to a legal aid organization, pleading for help to challenge the camp. I didn't know if it would work, but it was something. I sent it, along with a letter to Elise, care of a sympathetic counselor Rachel knew at Haven of Grace. I'm here, I wrote. I love you. We'll get through this. At school, things got worse. Someone spray-painted Dyke on my locker, the red letters screaming in the fluorescent light. I scrubbed it off, my hands shaking, but the word lingered in my mind. My parents found out, and their solution was to ground me, to keep me from bad influences. But they couldn't stop me from dreaming of Elise, from planning our escape. One night I overheard my parents talking about moving, about starting fresh in another town. Panic seized me. I couldn't leave, not when Elise might come back, not when we were so close to finding a way out. I snuck out, biking to the oak tree where we'd made our pact. Under its branches I made a new vow. I'd fight for her, for us, no matter what it took. The support group became my anchor. Rachel connected me with a lawyer who specialized in cases like Elise's. She warned me it could take months, even years, to challenge the camp legally, but I didn't care. Every step was a step closer to her. I started a secret blog, anonymous, where I wrote about our love, our struggle. It was my way of screaming into the void, of claiming our story in a world that wanted to erase it. Then one freezing December night my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered, my heart in my throat. Mia. Elise's voice, soft and trembling, came through. I'm out. I ran. My world stopped. She was at a bus station hours away, with nothing but a backpack and a borrowed phone. Stay there, I said, already grabbing my coat. I'm coming for you. The bus station was a blur of fluorescent lights and weary travelers when I arrived, my heart pounding from the 4-hour drive in my mom's borrowed car. I spotted Elise in a corner, her blonde braid tucked under a hoodie, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw me, she ran, crashing into my arms, her sobs muffled against my shoulder. You came, she whispered, and I held her tighter, as if I could shield her from the world. We drove to a motel, using the last of my babysitting money to get a room. Elise told me everything. The camp's endless prayers, the counselors who called her love a sin, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep thinking of me. She'd escaped during a supervised trip to a nearby town, slipping away when a counselor wasn't looking. I couldn't stay, she said, her voice fierce. I couldn't let them take you away from me. We stayed up all night, planning our next move. We were 17 with no money and nowhere to go, but we had each other. I told her about the support group, the lawyer, the blog that had started to gain traction online. People are reading our story, I said. They're rooting for us. Elise's eyes lit up, a spark of her old fire returning. Then let's keep fighting, she said. Together. The next morning we called Rachel, who connected us with a safe house in Columbus, a place for queer youth escaping bad situations. It wasn't glamorous, a cramped apartment with mismatched furniture, but it was ours. We enrolled in a new school, using fake names to avoid being tracked. The lawyer, Ms. Thompson, worked pro bono to help us file for emancipation, arguing that our family's rejection put us at risk. It was a long shot, but it was our only shot. School was different in Columbus. There were kids like us, openly queer, holding hands in the halls. For the first time, I saw what our love could be without fear. Elise started painting again, her canvases bursting with color, and I kept writing, turning our pain into stories that reached others. Our blog grew, comments flooding in from kids in small towns, from parents who'd lost their way, from allies who wanted to help. It wasn't just our story, Anna Marie, it was a beacon. But freedom came with a price. Elise's parents filed a missing persons report, and we lived in constant fear of being found. My parents called, leaving voicemails that swung between anger and pleading. Come home, Mia, my mom said in one. We can fix this. I deleted it, but the words lingered, a reminder of the life we'd left behind. One night, Elise woke up screaming, a nightmare from the camp still haunting her. I held her, whispering that she was safe, that we were together. I keep hearing their voices, she said, her face buried in my neck, telling me I'm wrong. I kissed her forehead, my heart aching. You're not wrong, I said. You're perfect. We fell asleep tangled together, the world outside our window fading away. The legal battle dragged on, but Ms. Thompson was relentless, gathering evidence of the camp's abuses, of the harm done to kids like Elise. We testified via video, our faces blurred to protect us. Elise's voice shook as she described the camp, but she didn't break. I love Mia, she said, her words clear and strong. And no one can take that away. I squeezed her hand, pride swelling in my chest. By spring, we got word that Haven of Grace was under investigation. Our blog had caught the attention of activists, and protests were forming outside the camp's gates. It wasn't enough to shut it down, but it was a start. Elise and I celebrated with cheap pizza and a playlist of her favorite jazz, dancing in our tiny apartment until we collapsed laughing. But the past wasn't done with us. One afternoon, as we walked home from school, a car pulled up beside us. Pastor Harper stepped out, his face a mask of fury. Elise, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You're coming home. My heart stopped, but Elise stood tall, her hand gripping mine. No, she said. This is my home now. He lunged forward and I stepped between them, fear and defiance surging through me. Leave her alone, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. A passerby intervened, a stranger who'd seen our story online. Back off, he said, phone in hand recording. Pastor Harper froze, then retreated, his eyes burning with rage. We ran, hearts pounding, until we reached the safe house. That night we held each other, shaken but unbroken. We're stronger than they are, Elise whispered, and I believed her. Summer came, and with it a fragile kind of peace. The Emancipation Papers went through, granting us freedom from our family's control. We were 18 now, legally adults, but the scars of our past lingered. Elise's nightmares faded, but her eyes still carried a shadow of what she'd endured. My sketches grew bolder, filled with images of us girls against the world, unapologetic in their love. Our blog became a movement. Kids sent us letters, sharing their own stories of hiding, of fighting, of finding hope. We spoke at rallies, our voices trembling at first, then growing stronger. Love is not a sin, Elise said at one event, her hand in mine. The crowd cheered, and I felt the weight of our journey lift just a little. We weren't alone anymore. Haven of Grace shut down that fall, its abuses exposed by the investigation we'd helped spark. It wasn't a full victory, other camps still existed, but it was a step. Elise painted a mural to celebrate, a vibrant explosion of color on the safe house wall. Two girls under an oak tree, their hands entwined, stars above them. This is us, she said, her smile brighter than I'd seen in months. We got jobs, Elise at an art supply store, me at a bookstore, and saved for college. New York was still our dream, a place where we could walk hand in hand without looking over our shoulders. We applied to art schools, our portfolios a testament to our survival. When the acceptance letters came, we cried, holding each other in our tiny apartment, the future finally within reach. But healing wasn't linear. Some days Elise would freeze at the sound of a deep voice, reminded of her father. Some nights I'd wake up gasping, dreaming of that word on my locker. We learned to lean on each other, to talk through the pain, to build a life where love was our foundation. We weren't perfect, but we were real. One evening we returned to the oak tree in our old town, a risky pilgrimage to reclaim our past. The air was warm, the stars bright above us. We spread a blanket just like that night by the lake and lay side by side. We made it, Elise said, her voice soft. Against all odds. I kissed her, slow and sure, no longer afraid of who might see. We're not hiding anymore, I said, and she smiled, her eyes reflecting the stars. Our story didn't end with a fairy tale wedding or a perfect resolution. It ended with us, two girls who'd fought for their love and won, not because the world changed, but because we did. We learned that love is worth the battle, that courage grows in the cracks of fear, that our hearts were never wrong. And as we drove toward New York, our hands clasped over the gearshift, I knew we'd carry that truth forever. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.